All right, folks, welcome. It is 7:08 in the morning on this Aloha Monday. Usually my seventh favorite day of the week, but because the fellas are in studio, it's now my eighth favorite day of the week. Come on, wasn't that was clever, right? Yeah? Man, they're going to smack me. I like it. SHOPO Hour underway. Fellas, good to see you. Brother Nick, aloha to you.
Good morning. Thanks again.
Pleasure. Brother Steve.
Rick, always great to see you. Happy to be here with you and your listeners.
Amen. And Brother Mark.
Good morning, Rick, Steve, Nick. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. It is Aloha Monday. Hope you boys had a good weekend. But I'd like to start off with an update, if that's okay. Just your perspective. First of all, what would you like to highlight or mention or refer to as far as membership status? How are things going in the Honolulu chapter? Maybe commentary for neighbor islanders. What's the tone and tenor of membership today? What are some perhaps uplifting and maybe a couple challenges that we should be aware of? Brother Nick, want to start?
So yesterday we went into our new modified work schedule for the patrol elements. All of the feedback that I've gotten so far has been essentially that things are going smoothly by the numbers. I'm sure there are some bumps in the road that we'll have to take care of in time, but for the moment, things seem to be working well. I appreciate the efforts of the officers who had to cover the transition between midnight and or 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. on the night prior. Thank you guys for coming in and taking care of that gap. And for those of you who started yesterday or who are going to start today or later on in the week, thanks again for rolling with this new schedule and making it happen. Also, just like to give a shout out to all of our brothers and sisters in Maui Police Department. SHOPO went back to Maui last week to continue its assistance. We took a break for a couple of days, but had to jump in for a few more days as well. So we were out there again, delivering meals, supplies, purchasing equipment, visiting people at the Lahaina, Kihei, and Wailuku stations. So a shout out to our brothers and sisters out there. Thank you for your dedication, your hard work. We're talking about officers that have been working for almost 2 weeks straight now, with no break. Hopefully they're coming up to one soon. And I'd also like to congratulate the officers from Hawaii Police Department who went out to help. They were there on the ground within just a couple of days providing assistance. And now we're seeing assets from the Honolulu Police Department come into Maui as of, I think, Thursday or Friday of last week as well. So our presence is getting bigger out there as far as our membership base goes. And we are doing everything we can to help.
Thank you for that, Nick. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, Rick, on your show, we talk a lot about the importance of community support of the police departments. And I'll tell you that tragedy on Maui really brought out the best in some local businesses there. And I would be remiss if we didn't thank them for what they did for our members. Chick-fil-A. Yes. We know this organization. We kind of know their values. Chick-fil-A has been absolutely phenomenal. They provided breakfast for 1 week with us. Sean, he's the owner there, proprietor of the Chick-fil-A establishment, took care of feeding the breakfasts for our membership. Then you had Danis Catering. I hope I'm saying that name right. Danis Catering. Danis Catering. They helped out with lunch and dinner. A total of 4,800 hot meals for our members over the 10-day period for everyone working hard on Maui. Safeway stepped up. Donated water and Gatorade. Lowe's stepped in. Donated half-mask respirators. And we come on this program to try to build relationships with the community, and we talk about how important it is for the community to band together. And in this time, there were officers needed some help, and these businesses stepped up to do that. And then to Nick's point, there's been such a clamoring of officers of all ranks that do different things in the police department that have wanted to go to Maui and help. It's just logistically that's been a little bit of a challenge, but there is that brotherhood, sisterhood within law enforcement, the thin blue line, and really special to see that. Again, the department leaders of the different police departments had to work some things out. So Honolulu is sending some people over, and there'll be continued support for the membership and the community as this process moves forward.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you, Brother Mark.
So the men and women that I keep in touch with, it's a common denominator of the same thing. It's just the short staffing. But hopefully this new schedule will curb that a little bit, and what time will tell, right? It just started yesterday, right, Nick? Yesterday?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So it started yesterday. We'll see if the short staffing, gets a little better, and then if the staffing does assist, maybe they could get back into more proactive enforcement, right? So you short staff, you really don't have time for that, right? So we'll see how it goes.
Thank you around the table for the updates, and the schedule was one thing that was top of mind. I remember back in initial negotiations that there was a desire to update uniforms and equipment. I was wondering if you can share where we might be on that for your members.
Yes, so we've been doing field testing of a variety of different types of replacement uniforms. And the field testing's been going well. We don't have final results yet. That's just simply because field testing and then analysis afterwards is a process. It does take time.
Mm-hmm.
But to the department's credit and to our Uniform and Equipment Committee, their credit in SHOPO as well. They've been working hard trying to get through it. The next step, I think, is going to be adjustments to the procurement process. You could choose the best uniform in the world for a police officer, but obtaining it in the city and county of Honolulu through all of the hoops that bureaucracy and government sets up for purchasing is another story. That's going to be the next step, which we're also working on as well. Can't really comment on it right now. Mm-hmm. A lot of it's theoretical. A lot of it are ideas that we've been working on for a while, but we're still on top of it.
Steve, Mark, what is the importance of the quality of a uniform, the material, functionality, and more?
So, Rick, obviously a uniform sends a message of who you're with and what you do. You have, there's a policeman. He's wearing a uniform. Couple roads you take this. Number one, you want the uniform to be functional for the officer that's wearing it. Okay, so when you talk about function, is it going to be something that this officer can wear on a 12-hour shift? Is it going to be comfortable? Is it going to be safe? Is it going to be effective? We're talking about external carriers, and it's all about officers when they're working, making sure that they continue to do the job effectively. And if there's equipment that's hurting their back or putting additional stress on their body and their joints, let's see if we can navigate away from that to give them the protection they need, the tools they need to do the job, but the ability to do the job pain-free without possibly going out with injuries later on. And we're trying to, obviously, the trend in law enforcement, that duty belt, you remember all the gear was around the waist. It's come out that can hurt officers' hips and backs. So now, especially on departments in the mainland, you see a lot of the equipment that officers use is now on a tactical vest. It's up on the upper torso. It's not hanging around that hip line, which can cause the lower back issues.
Yeah. So
the equipment has to be effective. It has to be tested, right? But ultimately, it's, will officers use it? Is it going to promote? Is it going to prevent officers from getting hurt? And isn't going to? Do we have enough equipment to allow the officers to do their jobs? For example, just came to mind. We in Honolulu PD we have a collapsible baton that we've carried on our belts for quite some time. It's just been part of the uniform, and there's been talk about maybe that collapsible baton as a tool, maybe isn't necessary, and maybe we can go with something else. So it's a constantly evolving process. It's evaluating. As Nick can allude to, sometimes the process moves a little slower than we would like as far as updating things. But Nick and his board are on it in Honolulu. And obviously, even though SHOPO represents 4 different departments, right, they're all different. Like Big Island right now already uses external carriers. Same with Maui. Honolulu hasn't is slowly going to that point. So different members have different pieces of equipment depending on what their agency permits and allows.
I would imagine, Mark, that the material is so important because of heat, etc.
So I was going to cover that, right?
Yeah.
I don't care what type of material you use. It's still hot. Let's face it, right? True. So, through my career, there was different materials, a couple different vendors that we had for uniforms, and, one was thinner than the other, but it's still hot. It doesn't matter, right? So, but like Steve covered, the functionality of the uniform, and then the equipment, like he mentioned, the baton. I don't think we, we hardly use that thing, and I think the taser would be better served in its place, more effective, and one of the biggest gripes, and I'm pretty sure you guys could agree with this, is the time to get the uniform, right? There was a time where you would go down and measure, and you wouldn't get it for 6 to 8 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it really had nothing to do with procurement. It had to do with the vendor was just overwhelmed. So they're going to have to cut that down.
So there we have it. Yeah. And before we go, because uniform and equipment, general public might be curious as to the firearms that are assigned and that what are standard, and firearms that are included in patrol cars and other vehicles of law enforcement. Can you even comment on that?
So there is a duty-issued pistol that all officers in the Honolulu Police Department are required to have on their person on duty and qualify with annually. There are what we call supplemental firearms. Those are a prescribed set of pistols or rifles or shotguns that officers can also utilize on duty or off duty in certain situations. Those firearms also have to be qualified with by the officer on an annual basis. An officer can elect to check out a long gun, a shotgun, or a rifle, or a less lethal shotgun at any time during the course of their shift. If they need it specifically, patrol officers have probably a wider range of situations where they would have to do things like that, i.e., you may elect to take a less lethal shotgun for a certain situation, or, which is often the case in patrol, shift supervisors will assign certain members of the team to take certain tools like that out with them so that there is a wide variety of things to select from given certain situations. There are also what we call emergency response vehicles now, which is kind of a new development that's happened within the last 12 to 14 months. Those vehicles are sort of tactically equipped in a sense. They have a allotment of specified equipment specifically for responding to crisis type of situations. Those include all sorts of gear and also different types of firearms.
While we're, again, with updates, is there any information pertaining to officers that have been injured? And is there any way that you can encourage us, the public, to help and assist, to donate, whatever might be helpful?
Sure. Well, Rick, thanks for bringing that to your listeners' attention. Absolutely. Currently on our SHOPOHawaii.org platform, we have the brief story of what happened regarding Officer Bill Sapolu's passing, and we have a way for the community to donate to him. All those donations would be considered charitable donations because we're a 501c3. So we have that available. We also have, if the community so sees fit, to donate to the officers on Maui that are part of our organization, and that's all right there at the website. So please come visit us at SHOPOHawaii.org. Also, too, we don't want to forget about Officer Felix Gassman. That why he was up there on the H3 performing his duty at that motor vehicle collision. He lost his legs. We continually will follow up with him and give him support internally, and that's part of what our job is as a union, right, Rick? So,
amen. Thank you for that very, very much. And 7:22 already in the morning. President Biden is set to arrive in a matter of just a few hours, if not sooner. I want to ask the gentleman what the preparation is, protocols, and the role of HPD and officers with this presidential visit. Good morning, one and all. It is 7:25 in the morning. It is the SHOPO Hour. The brothers are in studio. And want to thank Brother Nick, Brother Steve, Brother Mark, and hearts go out to Brother Bobby as always. But gentlemen, I mentioned before the break, President arriving, and could you share with us what the protocols are with a presidential visit as it pertains to the role of HPD, all the way from traffic to perhaps even involved with other duties? Traffic-wise.
Sure. So We used to receive presidential visits annually every December during President Obama's tour, which admittedly for a patrol officer at that time was kind of a difficult thing. It was a rough month. A lot of people wanted to take off for their family events. And then on top of it, you had 2+ weeks of the president being in town. Being short-staffed as well, a lot of resources go into that kind of thing. So you often found that patrol elements were kind of, sort of roughing it at times. But from what I understand on Maui right now, the Honolulu Police Department has sent some assets over there to assist. Obviously, control of roadways is going to be one issue. Security is going to be the other. So from the police department, those are the types of assets that you're going to see over there. Road closures are unfortunately typical. There are traffic delays. I'm sure they're trying to mitigate that as well as possible over there, given the circumstances. But those are the kinds of things that your average police department has to deal with. Of course, a presidential visit is an honor, but at the same time, it's a huge undertaking for any law enforcement agency.
I would imagine. Gentlemen?
Yeah, Rick, you're obviously going to have Secret Service playing point with this, and they're going to have reached out to the department on their own ahead of time. So Secret Service has definitely talked with leadership at Maui PD. Then you're going to have the different elements within the police department that are going to jump into action. You're going to have officers that are in the traffic division to assist with road closures and possibly some form of escort, depending on how they roll things like that in Maui. You're going to have the officers with the tactical experience, whether you want to call them SWAT, Specialized Services Divisions. This is when the tactical officers come out. They're gonna have a role. The bomb guys making sure the roadways are clear. And like I said, a lot of prep goes into that. So really, it's an all hands on deck moment. And it actually can get very expensive for the counties. People don't realize this, that when the president comes to town, any police resources that are used are not, it's not like the Secret Service says, hey, thanks a lot for helping out. Here's a check for $400,000 because this is how much it costs. Why presidential visits are an honor, and it's something that the commander-in-chief is allowed to do. Let it be known that the local taxpayers cover that bill. That comes out of the local fund, wherever it gets pulled from. And the resources are provided, of course, for someone at that position, but the expenses are not reimbursed by the federal government to the local government. It does come out of the local coffers for that.
And Brother Mark, your experience and thoughts?
Yeah, so that's what I was going to cover. We're not covered, but I mean, we do submit the bill, but we never get paid for it. So it's on the dime of the local people, right? The local taxpayer. But hey, like presidential visit's an honor, supposedly, right? But it's a big, undertaking. And let's face it, it's the president of the United States. You got to supply the security for that, right? So, there's a lot of resources that are taken from all different directions, and I mean, what are you gonna do? And there's a lot of guys that you're not allowed to take off. You cannot take off. You have to be available, right? So. If you had something planned with your family, a trip or this and that, no, you need to wear that's priority, right?
Is it a full mobilization then of the department?
For certain units, it is.
Yeah,
especially for our SSD units, right? Specialized service units, like it's all hands on deck for those guys, right? And then I believe some certain plainclothes units, our crew units, and all that. So
CRU, RDF,
so. It's a big undertaking. It really is. And a lot of guys do a lot of work for that.
Wow. Well, as you've explained, thank you.
Yeah. And it's 24/7. Let me remind you that.
Yeah, the entire time. And now with Maui PD having undergone such profound for the past 2 weeks, on top of that, the visit.
Yeah, and you're going to have patience, Rick, because when a presidential motorcade rolls through a community or an area, everything gets locked down and shut down several minutes, if not pushing 20, 30 minutes before the president's motorcade even goes by. So my recommendation humbly would be, listen, if you don't need to be on the road when President Biden is moving, don't. And stay off the road, and please just have a little bit more aloha, a little bit more patience, because traffic is obviously already an issue here in the islands. And I can only imagine on Maui with everything going on there, it's going to be gridlock. So if you don't have to drive, try not to.
What is public access in a situation like that? Is it determined by the feds? You mentioned Secret Service. And if so, does local police, do they assist in segmenting and enforcing proximity of public to president?
Yeah. So, Rick, when I was riding the motorcycles and President Obama came multiple times, basically this is where you're going to have the communication with the Secret Service, the leadership at the different department, the leadership in the traffic division, the leadership in the Specialized Services Division, or SWAT, if you want to call it that. And the route is going to be predetermined ahead of time. And then the information is going to get disseminated down through the ranks, and then the lieutenant, the sergeants, and then there's going to be, depending on how they want to do the motorcade escort, if it's a permanent lockdown or a rolling lockdown, but the route is disseminated at more the last minute to keep a little bit level of secrecy. But just, it's a tremendous amount of resources to move the President of the United States from one place to another. It's a huge production, and it starts long before he even arrives.
I don't want to get too speculative, but regardless of who the president is, there will probably be a protester or two or many. At what point is a line crossed between being protesting the appearance of a president, and that line is crossed, that causes law enforcement to intervene?
No, typically, it really is dependent on the actions of the protesters. I mean, obviously, it's your right to be able to assemble and give free speech. What you do beyond that is really going to set the wind for whatever the law enforcement response is. So there's really no hard and fast rule per se that I've ever experienced. It's more just kind of a judgment, sort of let's see what's going on here. Let's see what these people are doing. Obviously, if they are inciting a riot, if they are throwing things, if they are destroying property, so on and so forth, then you have some criminal elements that you have to address there. But at the same time, if you're on a crowd detail, do you have to stand there and take insults? Yes, you do. Do you have to hear people yelling all sorts of crazy things? Mm-hmm. Yes, you do. That's just part of your job. And that's one of the many things that officers have to be prepared for when a president does visit. And to be perfectly honest with you, it was alluded earlier about some of the elements within the police department that are sort of reallocated for these types of things, your crime reduction units, your rapid deployment forces, and so on. Often, these elements are coming from a patrol unit. So these are patrol officers who essentially play double duty. And that's kind of where it gets stretched thin for the patrol officers in the field for that day, is that normally their ranks would be augmented by these guys, or I shouldn't say augmented, but naturally part of the team. Now these resources are getting stripped away, so the team for the community is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and has to manage the normal day-to-day operations for the community with different types of resources, less resources.
Gotcha. Final thoughts on this before we take our bottom of the hour break?
Secret Service doesn't play around with presidential security. He's got a protection detail, serious individuals with serious firepower. If anybody thought they were going to come in the way of that motorcade or go through, let's say, as Nick was saying, the police line the streets, block that. Mm-hmm. If anybody tries to come to that motorcade, what do you think those black SUVs are that follow the president? You think there's just reporters in there? I'm going to tell you right now, it is no joke. Their only priority is the security of the president. And if any of these protesters thought that they could approach that motorcade as it's passing, that's a lights out decision for them. I can tell you right now, because even as police officers protecting the president, it was made very clear to us that we in uniform as officers are not to go anywhere near that motorcade. Even on our police motorcycles, when we were passing the motorcade, we were given some specific instructions. So those folks don't play around. And as far as these protesters go, do not get in the way of that motorcade, because they have one goal in mind, and that's to get the leader of the free world from one place to another. And if you think you're going to stand in their way, or they're going to ask questions about what your motives are, it's going to be lights out for you.
Got it. There we have it. Gentlemen, thank you very much for covering that for us, and we appreciate it greatly. I'm going to share some thoughts that are in the public domain and have the fellas have a reply, response, and insight. And we'll do that when we return on the SHOPO Hour. The SHOPO Hour continues. By the way, in the 8 o'clock mark, radio goddess Kim Commando will be with me and sharing her personalized stories in regard to the Valley Isle. Gentlemen, we'll take a call and at 521-8383. And again, if you would like to have a conversation with the fellas, please do so. Brother Nick, Brother Steve, Brother Mark in studio with us today. We head over to the Valley Isle, and that's where Pamela joins us. Pamela, thank you very much for your call and welcome to the program. Good morning.
Hello, are you talking to Pamela?
Yes, I am.
Okay. There was a big static, and you went away on the phone for a bit. So
Okay. Okay, we're on the air.
I just wanted to ask a question because I'm on Maui, and we get no information here. Do these gentlemen have any idea when Air Force One is supposed to land and take off so that we can kind of try to plan if we have to get out of our house today?
That's a question we'll ask, but I'm not sure with Maui PD that we're going to have that accessible right now. However, Brother Romes, could you do a search for time of arrival of the president's plane to Maui for us? And we'll get that for you if it's available, Pamela. But I do thank you for your call very much, and it's top of mind.
Yeah, and Rick, it's hard because in that situation, if memory serves me correctly, they don't give a specific. It's a range.
Yeah.
For security purposes, they shut down the airspace as close to arrival time as possible, and it's a range of arrival. They don't normally put that out at as if Hawaiian Airlines was pulling into the terminal.
Right. Understand. And thank you for that.
Yeah.
And Pamela, we'll do our best to at least get an estimate if it's available. But wishing you and all of our friends well on the Valley Isle, as always. I want to pose a couple of things while I was perusing the public domain. Came across a couple of things, and not necessarily pertaining to Maui, but just in general. First off, commentary in regard to the recent shooting in Maui that caused loss of life. There was a death there. The commenter writes 93%. 13% commit 90% of all crimes, alluding to the perpetrator here. And says it's the work of another HPD, Alm and Associates, catch and release feral criminal with a rap sheet a mile long. I bring this up because I know the response to this, but if it's out there, I'd love for you to have a chance to reply, respond in any way. And who would like to start?
Yeah, I'll start off by saying that I take some objections to that statement. Quite frankly, if somebody's got a rap sheet that's a mile long, then the catching part is not an issue, and obviously the police department's doing its job, and that's all I have to say about that.
There we go. Steve?
Just to piggyback off Nick, obviously whoever wrote that is frustrated trying to make a point. Let's just go back to your elected leadership, okay? The police department is one peg basically in the criminal justice system wheel. We arrest people. If there's probable cause that a crime was committed, we make the arrest. The prosecutor's office determines bringing charges, how long the judiciary gets in, how long they're going to stay incarcerated. There's a lot of moving parts. Mark said this many times in the program. Elect your leadership wisely, and you get who you vote for. So I got to say about that.
Brother Mark?
First of all, HBD doesn't release people, okay? We hook them up, we put them in our temporary holding, and then we confer with prosecutors or the judicial system. They release them, right? So it was in the news about that homicide that happened outside the Kapolei station, right?
Right.
And then you get all these attorneys and all these people on social media saying HBD should have never released. We don't release. We release because of either prosecutors or the judges, okay? So don't put it on HBD that we're letting people go. Trust me, we want to keep them in, right? So about the 13% committing 90% of all crimes, I don't know about the percentage, but it's true. A lot of people are committing most of the crimes. Why? Because they're being released by the judicial system. You get what you vote for. Or not only that, you guys should start getting pissed off at all these judges for doing that. Judges and prosecutors. Go after them. That's all I got to say.
And Rick, just one
It's
thing
really
about,
frustrating.
And Rick, just one thing about the judges. Listen, not throwing stones here, just educating. The judges are appointed, which is a little bit unique. A lot of the judges in the mainland, they have to run for election. This is why it's so important. Whatever you want to do politically, the leadership that gets elected has so much control over the direction of a community. The elected leadership gets to appoint the judges as well.
And confirm.
Right. So it's just incumbent upon trying to get, the right leadership, depending on how you feel it's being run currently, right?
Sure.
Yeah, I'd like to add one more thing. You know what? It's when you get insulted with comments like that, it's not easy to not react and point fingers. So what I said earlier, I still stand by it, but at the same time, I will say that if you're worried about release, then you ought to pay close attention to bail reform. Okay, because remember that everybody's entitled to bail. How you do it is another story. And that plays a factor in as well that police officers have no control over. All right, we're very good at taking instructions. We're very good at doing our job and catching criminals. What happens after that is often out of our control. It's a prescribed set of rules that we simply have to abide by. So we can't always ensure follow through, but I think you'll find that we're really good in the beginning.
And besides the bail reform, you got to remember there's a lot of laws that were decriminalized.
Yes.
So laws that were supposed to put these people behind bars, let them go. So,
I'm just praying that we don't get to the point where other communities are on the mainland. I mean, it's just unbelievable that we have reached a point in general in the American society that this is allowed to happen. What I'm seeing in Portland, Seattle, San Francisco, and other locations.
It's almost like
It's
the criminals
just-
are a protected class.
Amen. That's a very good way to put it. It is 7:48. Make it 7:49 in the morning. Minutes remaining on the SHOPO Hour. We'll use them well. Once again, we return. It is the SHOPO Hour, and we're still trying to find out information about the arrival of President Biden on the Valley Isle. And if we have it available before the top of the hour, we will definitely share it. In the meantime, though, we go out to Kailua. That's where Steve is part of the program. And Steve, out in Kailua, thank you for joining us on the SHOPO Hour. Good morning.
Thank you, and thanks for having this show, and thank all you members of the police department for doing such a great job, even though you have impossible tasks. When Barack Obama first came here, I got to work with the people who brought him in, and over on Kailua, they did all the stuff with Secret Service and whatever. And the thing is that Secret Service has one thing, like you said, to protect the president, and we have a lot of problems with this Black Lives Matter thing going on here. And if the BLM thing stood for Blue Lives Matter, they'd be going against you guys. And I'm so tired of hearing about how bad the cops do this and this and this and this. Try being one. Thanks for doing a great job, and have a wonderful day. Aloha.
Aloha to you. Thank you so very much. Gentlemen, reply for Steve before
Thanks
we
for calling,
continue.
Stephen. Thanks for your support of the police department. And, well, unfortunately, that's just happened to be the political narrative nowadays, right? It's like attack the police and, I guess Black Lives Matter is the item of the day. I don't know.
I think it's run its course.
Yeah,
BLM
it's
has
getting
been exposed as a complete fraud and a sham. The sentiments may be valid in the minds of some, but the actual administration and presentation and exploitation of people, they should be in jail themselves that perpetrated that. And wokeism as a whole, I feel, is being diminished because people are now going, all right, enough. Enough of you people. Just settle down, move on. That doesn't dissuade his comment from being accurate if it was Blue Lives Matter. There are still sentiments not attached to the other things, And I'm prayerful that times like these that we have together, we'll share exactly what the life of an officer is and how valuable the service is. So on that note, it is already 7:54. I think we covered what I jotted down for us today.
Right on.
That's all right. That worked well. And it leaves us a few minutes remaining. I'd like to go around and just get some thoughts. And by the way, I'm still waiting to get a bumper sticker. I'm standing by, brother. Are we 10 minutes away?
I was going to say, you have a lot of phone numbers in your phone, Rick. You can just, you got a lot of contacts.
But again, you can support, learn more, be apprised of what's taking place with SHOPO. Website again, Steve, is?
Sure. Please come visit us at shopohawaii.org. From that platform there, you can come find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Not to take it lightly, but it is officially the full back to school starting today. And I know we chatted about it last week, but now with UH and others on the road too, do we see a discernible difference in regard to traffic today? I know you're here with me now, but are we anticipating a lot of more congestion and such?
Of course, naturally. Yeah, it's going to be that way. It's going to be that way in any neighborhood that has a public or private school in it. It's going to be that way in any neighborhood that has some type of college campus in it. So once again, we're back into full swing traffic-wise. Just prepare for it. Plan your day accordingly. And there's nothing wrong with leaving early and trying to get out there early. And just to the last caller, I'd like to take a moment. Thank you for your comments. They were very nice. One of the things that we experienced while we were helping on Maui last week was that there was a tremendous amount of community support and outpouring for first responders and law enforcement. People were thanking their police officers, their EMTs, fire personnel, ocean safety, and so on. And it's situations like that I think when the community realizes, these people are very important, the first responders are important, and I'd like to say thank you to everybody out there who assisted and helped us out and supported us. There were organizations as well. Steve mentioned a few earlier, but there were resources we were calling on, food resources from places like Bangamount Grinds, McDonald's, Tante's at Ma'alai Harbor, Maui Soda Company. These are all organizations that came together and said, yeah, you know what? How can we help SHOPO get resources out to these police officers at a discounted rate? Often things were just given to us for free. Can you take these things out to these places? We appreciate the work that you're doing. We want to support our first responders. Can you make these things available? So the sentiment, I think, like you said, it's swinging the other way. And it's times like this where people really do realize, hey, you know what? We need to support the agencies out there that are out there, protecting us and serving us. On
a side note, I have grave concerns about the overall economy of Maui, about the families that are no longer employed, businesses that are closing, a revenue base with tourism not at the numbers even close to before, over 7,000 daily arrivals, which are now down to about 1,200 per day. And the duration of this can cause, again, another incredible crisis. So I'm prayerful and hopeful. I'm working on something that I hope will demonstrate. Listen, if you have plans to go to the mainland, you have plans to travel, and you're making those plans, consider making those plans to visit our friends on Maui and support the economy there, because in dire circumstance, unfortunately, difficult things arise. And I'm really hopeful that that's going to take place. So, final thoughts today, gentlemen, around the table. Brother Mark.
On Wednesday, HPD had a promotional ceremony, so congratulations to all those that stepped up and are going to be supervisors, and congratulations on your hard work.
Amen. Well done. I'll go to Brother Nick for some final thoughts briefly before we go today.
I just want to say thank you. Thank you to the listeners for participating, and appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you. Brother Steve, about 30 seconds to wrap things up.
Rick, it's always great to hear when your listeners call in and show that love and take time out of the morning to call us. We appreciate that. There's a lot of people listening, and I think that love and admiration goes a long way. We appreciate it, and I'm glad it gets out there. And two, you talk about Maui. People can say, "Oh, well, we should diversify and not have so much of income on Maui based on tourism." Well, that's all fine and good, but any type of rebuilding process is going to be an emphasis on getting people back to Maui to participate in those kind of tourist activities, because there's, as you know, there's other towns and cities that are open, ready to welcome people. So
and there we go. Gentlemen, Brother Nick, Brother Steve, Brother Mark, you have officially made Monday my number one favorite day of the week.
Sweet talking.
There we go. We'll resume next week with the fellas. In the meantime, Kim Commando coming up next.